Welcome to Transformation Tales, a podcast by Shanda, where we celebrate the heroic journeys of storytellers. I am your host, Dumi Mabena, and each week we'll bring you inspiring stories of creators who found their voice, overcame challenges, and transformed through the power of podcasting. Get ready to be motivated as we explore the growth and triumphs and the amazing stories of the people that inspire us to do what we do. Mackenzie, thank you so much for making the time. I want to ask you first question. How does it feel being on this side of the screen?
It's a hot seat.
Gosh, no, but as I was saying before we started speaking, firstly, thank you so much for making time to speak with me. I think it's always great being able to speak to people that I call one of us, and the one of us, it's people who love telling a story, empowering people, and making sure certain perspectives are heard. So for everybody listening, maybe you can introduce yourself, if you will, and then I'll kind of start asking you more questions around all the beautiful things that you've built and shared with the world.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dumi. So my name's Mackenzie Loy, founder and CEO of Homemade in DC, as well as The New Majority. Most of my time is being spent on Homemade in DC right now. We're an online marketplace that offers corporate catering and custom gifting, and everything is sourced locally from women, people of color, and LGBTQ entrepreneurs and small businesses. So our mission is to close the racial and gender wealth gap through food entrepreneurship and small business. And I love what you had said before we started recording about, a platform that is really telling people's stories. And I also think that it's really about connecting people. So, and how do people connect? They could connect on, a human level and understanding, not just, tasting something, a cookie or seeing a candle or a tote bag, but really understanding the story behind that product, who made it, why they made it, what makes them special, why they put so much passion and love into it. And then that's the thing that really helps you go, oh my God, this is like so much more than that, gift box. And it really kind of resonates and makes an impact. And so I think it's about empowering people. It's about telling their stories, but ultimately it's about connecting kind of people to people, whether you're a small business to a corporate, right? Or, a food entrepreneur to a vendor.
I love that. Because whenever I do my research, I'm always trying to dig to the essence of what a person's working on. And the platform thing jumped at me. Why the connecting piece? I think, in fact, I'm going to split it, because why the connecting piece? Why is that important to you?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what we're all trying to do, right? I think, for everything that whether you're in business or, I went back to school for policy and then added on the MBA, but it really is about just connecting people. Yes, somebody has supply, somebody has demand. Let's put them together. Okay, we've got a great business. But I think kind of what brings purpose, right? So it goes beyond just connecting that supply and demand, but kind of really being thoughtful about who are you sourcing from? Why are you sourcing from them? And if you can understand their story, then you're going to check all of those boxes because you're going to understand the who, the why, the what, and the impact of that purchase.
I love that. I'm gonna take us a little bit back now, because often this insight as to why people do things that they do often come from somewhere. I want to take us back to, I guess, maybe your childhood, because I think what I find when I look at your research is, or the work that you do rather, is there's this intentionality around empowerment, wealth gap closing, entrepreneurship. And I want to ask where that comes from. Did you grow up with parents that were entrepreneurs or not really?
Yeah, in retrospect, especially as I've kind of embarked on this founder journey over the last couple of years, I've realized I've had amazing examples in my parents, and I didn't even think about it. So my mom is kind of a more traditional route. She's an accountant by trade, and then she worked for big corporate firms, and then started on her own journey and formed Team CFO. Which provides fractional, like she didn't say the word fractional. Now everybody's like, we're fractional, right? But that's what she was doing decades ago, fractional CFO services for small to mid-sized businesses who couldn't afford it yet. As a small business who can't afford a CFO and is like literally closing my own books and QuickBooks, I'm like, I can see how helpful that is rather than having to fundraise or wait a few years to, to hire like that full time. And she took that plunge and it's been amazing. And she's now starting to wind it down. Several decades later, having served how many businesses, and her focus, it wasn't explicit, but she always leaned towards like women owned businesses. If, sometimes she'd take a risk, right? Maybe they were a little too small for her, but she's like, I can see the impact that I'll have on them and kind of bring her expertise. And then my dad is a university professor. So he just retired, exercise physiology, kinesiology, if you're familiar, exercise science.
Right.
And you don't really think of like a university college professor being entrepreneurial, right? Or like a founder type.
Right.
But I've realized what he's done is he went from research into like programming. So like, how can we bring the research of helping people live healthier lives through exercise into the community? And so he started just a ton of different projects, but one of them culminated was called 100 Citizens, which actually was recognized by Michelle Obama, and he got to go to the White House for putting together a community-based like fitness programming run by college students who are trying to get experience, right? Focused on Latino populations within like San Fernando Valley and all around LA. And he was recognized, went to the White House. It evolved into 3 wins, but everything, like, it never formalized as a nonprofit. It's not a for-profit. It's strictly like out of like a CSUN and community like partnership. And what I realized is like years later, he was starting a business. I mean, it's not for profit, but it was an organization meeting a demand within the community where just a lot of for-profit businesses, government agencies were overlooking, but it was a huge need, right? Like if you look at obesity rates, health rates. So all that to say is I have had 2 incredible like entrepreneurial figures in my life. And I think some of those lessons probably just like seep down into me growing up. And if you see a problem, you should do something about it, right? Take the initiative. And you should always be kind of looking around, seeing like who's doing what, how can we help, how can we, okay, wait, and how can we improve upon that? And not just focusing on, kind of what's going to make money, right? But like, where is the need and how can we solve that need?
Fantastic. And I know, the reason I always ask that question is because we never think about it a lot of the time, but often we're influenced by people that are around us. And sometimes, your parents or someone in your family or somebody, a friend even, who's been doing something cool, and consciously or subconsciously, you always gain from that. And sometimes, this goes into my next question, I want to figure out, did that have an influence in, I guess, deciding where you wanted to go? Maybe not even college. What do you want to be when you're a kid? Did you want to, because you do a lot of great impact.
I was like, teacher, my dad's a teacher, I'll be a teacher, right? But then I realized, I was like, I don't think I want to teach kids. They're too crazy. You don't want to teach the teenagers too much going on. No, but no, everything. So when I graduated from college, my first job out of college was as a business development representative, BDR, for NetSuite, which is cloud-based ERP, now owned by Oracle. My bad was I did not realize that was a sales role. So when this sounds so silly in retrospect, but I thought it was business development. I am developing the business. And I just thought that would be really, a great opportunity to learn how businesses run, how to develop, how to grow. And ultimately, it was a great experience because you are always going to be selling something, right? Whether as the founder, CEO of Homemade, what I am selling 100% day in, day out. I'm selling our vision. I'm selling our mission. I'm selling our products. I'm selling all of our food entrepreneurs' products, right? And the value. So it ended up being a very like formative, really great experience. But I also realized that it's not enough to be successful in what you do. If I'm going to spend so much time of my day, right, I want to make sure that's having an impact. So I was always looking for like, okay, well, yes, I'm selling the ERP system that might be helping the nonprofits to operate better, but I was always looking for like, okay, how do I go more direct? How can I have an impact on the people I care about the most? And that's how I kind of made my way around into coming back to school for public policy, because that's where I was like, okay, I think that's where I can uh, really make an impact. And then while I was at Georgetown, I ended up adding on the MBA because I was like, I'm not coming back to school, so might as well do the 2 degrees in one. But that's where I kind of really was solidifying, like, how could we use business to solve some of the problems that I see? And part of those problems that I really was focusing on was the racial and gender wealth gap. I'm thinking about kind of from a financial literacy perspective, like personal finance is like a passion of mine, financial independence. And I really think that like small business is a great way to pursue that. There's so many ways, you could do a 9 to 5, you can do a ton of things, right? But small business was kind of where I wanted to make that impact and how I wanted to help. And so I think it was, again, just like everything has like slowly been pushing me in this direction of like impact, purpose. But I always think about business as like the path to it, because business, if you can survive as a business, that means there is a problem, you are providing the solution. It is a sustainable, program. Essentially, you're not waiting for funding from, government, or you're not waiting, right? Like I really believe that we can solve some of kind of society's biggest problems through business. We still need everybody else involved, but that's like the path that I'm choosing.
I love that. And I want to find out what came first. Because, of course, I mean, graduate school is a fantastic time to, of course, have time to think and explore different ideas, concepts, whether it's adding on another degree in your particular case, which you did. And of course, that there's this impact that I want to make. There's also like as a commercial interest where they maybe meet together. I want to ask you, what came first in terms of, okay, I have this desire to marry these two, passions, but is it the new majority, or was it Homemade in DC first? And what was like, maybe talk us through the thinking in going from idea into, of course, that becoming a tangible thing.
Yeah. So my funny story is that when I was graduating, I was reflecting on my time at Georgetown and, pursuing graduate degrees, and 3 years ended up being a really long time to be in school. But I did learn a lot, and you're right, I did get to experiment a lot. And once I graduated, I had done a lot of thinking to think like, do I want to pursue this full time? Do I think it has enough legs to pursue full time? But when I was looking back at my applications, I was like, but your admissions applications, right? I was like, I'd like to work for a government agency or maybe a tech company, and who's pushing policy in a different direction. Or door number 3 is I might want to start my own social enterprise, like be a mission-driven organization that's for profit. And it was like one little sentence in my yeah. But I think what it shows is like I was thinking about it. Yeah, the wheels were turning before I applied. And so when I took classes, right, like everything was kind of, I was taking in the coursework and like doing the project and meeting, fellow students with kind of that lens of like, I might want to start my own thing. What is the thing that's the right thing that the world needs that I am equipped to do? And so Homemade was the first thing that I really started experimenting around. And it was in that the summer, like the first year that I was in school. I had the idea for a cottage food incubator. Because prior to grad school, I had been baking and selling cinnamon rolls out of my own apartment. Thought it was super fun, really stressful actually, when you're in San Francisco and it's too cold and the yeast doesn't rise. And then you're like, oh no, what do I do? So I was like, I think this is a great way to utilize the resources you already have, your home, your kitchen, right? A recipe. It was actually not my recipe. It was Pioneer Woman's recipe, but using resources you already have to generate a supplemental income. That's like the era of the side hustle, right? And thinking, wouldn't that be a great way to help people shore up their personal finances, put a little extra away for retirement or for emergency funds, right? So that was kind of the initial personal finance, cottage food, baking food is like near and dear. Everyone needs to eat, and kind of trying to put these pieces together. Cottage food incubator was not what it equaled. That's what I thought it equaled. But it turns out, I think this, if you want to start a business, like you don't need help starting a business. You will start the business.
Right.
Yes. But legally or illegally, right? Like whether you follow the rules or not, but you're going to start testing and selling and delivering. And so what I realized though is once you get in it, and this is where we are now, we're in year 3 of business, is like you need customers, you need the connections, you need help staying in business. You may have a phenomenal product, but if it's not being connected to the people who need it, right? Yeah. And now I'm thinking, okay, cinnamon rolls, how often are you going to buy cinnamon rolls? Like maybe once a couple of months, maybe every Easter, or like you're having brunch with your girlfriends, right? You buy some cinnamon rolls. But who would buy regularly, consistently, like a high volume, something that makes a difference? And that's corporate. So going from trying to connect the small businesses and bring them as, to corporates for customers, that's kind of where the Homemade in DC really became, it's not a cottage food incubator, right? Or accelerator, but really we're an online marketplace that connects these small food businesses to big corporates who are looking, yes, for amazing products, but then also to source thoughtfully, locally from small businesses. They don't have the time to find them, right? And we're going to be kind of that connection. So that was kind of like, things were always in the brain. Yeah. But it kind of took a while for them to evolve. And even today, am I sure that we have like the right mix? Like we're saying the right things? I don't know, but we're getting enough kind of demand signals of like, this is something we need. Is it the burning need, like if I'm comparing to ERP, right? And like your financials, is it that burning need? No, but I think it's the thing that really helps elevate gifting really helps to elevate, enhance business relationships. Like at the end of the year, or if you're an intern and you receive a gift that says, we, really appreciate your efforts and your impact this summer. We'd love for you to start your career with us. Like that's something that will make a difference kind of in the long run. So yeah, those are all the pieces we're trying to put together.
Yeah. I dig that. I'm going to come to the new majority next, but before I do, I want to speak about how you go about, I guess, telling the story from both sides. So with the Homemade in DC, of course, you've got this fantastic business that you've created, a platform that, of course, you're saying, hey, there are these amazing people that are doing what they can, what they have, and doing an amazing job at that. Mm-hmm. Of course, they need to be connected to people that, of course, can support them, but not even support, but just they can trade with rather. So I guess the challenging thing becomes, okay, I've built the platform, but I have to get these people in front of a particular group of people. And of course, that's often like a story. I almost have to pitch them, and you have to do like
totally
them. And so how have you gone about telling that story? And I know of course you've got the website, but what has that been like, that experience of hearing the story, understanding, detail that man, and also in doing that, you must hear the most fantastic stories about these amazing people that are doing such great things. Be like, but man, how do I condense that and then compel the person on the other side? And what has that been like? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think our impact reporting was born from that desire to tell the story of like why sourcing locally, intentionally, thoughtfully makes a difference. So it is about that product, that person who's making it, whether, it's roasting coffee beans, really kind of thinking about who you're sourcing from and how you're doing that roasting to make sure it's the best product that's like the best for you, right? Or if it's a family cookie recipe and kind of bringing that into like mass production in a way that still like maintains the authenticity. That's what Caroline from Green Island's doing. The coffee was Blues Coffee and Southeastern Roastery. But then telling the story to, both ultimately our customers is like, when you made this purchase, that for you was like a line item on your budget, right? Like, yeah, of course, each year we're going to do holiday gift boxes, and we've been ordering from the same place year in, year out. We get a couple of thank yous, right? But it's just kind of what we do. And then to tell them this order helped push, Blues Coffee into profitability for the first time a year before they thought that it was going to be possible, right? Or this order really helped put this food entrepreneur on the map. They got featured, they got a few new customers, right? And then like that kind of cycle kind of continues. And sharing the stories of how pushing into profitability helped us keep the doors open during a slow season, helped us bring on part-time help so that we could grow as a business. I can stop being in the business and work on the business, right? And so our impact reports were born out of trying to share not just, this is how much you spent locally. And we know that 68% of every dollar spent locally stays within the community. So that's kind of a stat that everybody, is like, okay, great. We, check, we done good, right? But then the story, the personal story that had that impact, that's the thing that we push along, because that's the thing that people remember. They open the box, they read the card inserts that have the faces and the stories, and then they go, okay,
This is
wow. Like, this wasn't just a holiday gift. They really thought about who they want to source from, and it really reflects that company's values. And like, I really appreciate that kind of personalization, customization. And oh, that's so cool. Look at this. Like the impact follows 3 months later where they're like, oh my gosh. And it's like the gift that keeps on giving. And so that's kind of how we keep passing it along. But you're right. Like each time, I am basically pitching the product and the orders, the sales for, the 60 plus food entrepreneurs that we're working with. So that's my value prop to them, is like, I am your sales and marketing channel. But it is really great, I think, when you get to talk to someone and they're like, I get it. Like, I get why it may take me a little bit of work because I'm going to work with you to customize that gift. But like that little extra work from our customer side makes a huge difference.
And what's your dream for Homemade in DC? Like what, like if you had a magic wand, like we have a magic wand, so, we wish it and then, wow, this is
yes. It's like, it's what I call it, the like, wouldn't it be cool?
Wouldn't it be cool?
Right? You get really excited afterwards. So I think, wouldn't it be cool if within, 5 years, right, we've got homemade hubs across the US. So we're starting at Homemade in DC, but then maybe we have a Homemade in Baltimore, a Homemade in Richmond, a Homemade in Kansas City, a Homemade in Oakland. And so you've got these homemade hubs across the US that are all sourcing local, right? And they become little hubs of like hyper local entrepreneurship and small businesses. And it becomes the norm for, if you're a law firm, an accounting firm, or, even just, a strong regional business, right? And you are sourcing locally and you've got kind of all of these ties that are happening. And then, so I think that's going to take me a little bit more than 5 years. But then wouldn't it be cool if we start to go upstream and we're looking like along the entire supply chain? And so we've got, maybe 300 small food businesses within DC that we're sourcing from, and they're all looking for local produce, flour, local sustainable packaging. And so now we're able to aggregate their buying demand, right? Going upstream to other local producers. And like, I just am picturing kind of this like rippling out effect of where we're buying locally, we're sourcing thoughtfully, we're bringing sustainability into it. And it's just, it's really about starting to like aggregate that buying power, and just kind of keep moving. So I want to move geographically out, but then like supply chain, I want to also move out. And I just wanted to be putting my policy hat on here for a second. Like, if we could then do a study that shows when there's a homemade hub in the city,
Mm.
truly the racial and gender wealth gap does start to close because we have thriving local businesses owned by women, BIPOC, LGBTQ owners, right? They're hiring local, they're hiring diverse employees, and we're really starting to build kind of this entrepreneurship, hyper local business that then closes that racial and gender wealth gap in the hubs that Homemade operates around. So we'll have like control, we'll have, experimental cities. It's going to be great. But that one's probably like a 10-year plan.
That's a compelling story because as a consumer, who doesn't want to give to, not even, but I think it should not, who doesn't want to give to something like that? I think it's incredibly compelling. Of course, I've had many of your Homemade in DC meals, and I went up through Georgetown, etc. And I think, and it's good, right? It's not like it's like I'm doing charity. It's good. I'm like, this is really good. I wish I knew this existed before. It often happens. Like, wait, where can I get this stuff?
And we just want to make it easy, right? So that you're not like, oh, how do I go find that? But it's like, oh yeah, let's go to Homemade. One vendor, we worked with her, we worked with that team, we're in their invoicing system, right? But you're going to get access to new and diverse cuisines or entrepreneurs. Like, again, one source, but each time you're going to be like, yes, I know it's going to be delicious. Like, right. That's my first criteria. But then, you're going to be like, oh yeah, that was awesome. I'm going to like save them on my, Instagram and Google Maps so that I can go like lunch for next Saturday. I'll go buy it from them. Right. Like we become your like go-to source for just like what's good.
Yeah. Oh, is there a Homemade app?
Just our website right now, homemadeindc.com. And then obviously we're on like Instagram and LinkedIn, right? Homemade in DC. And we're working on building out that marketplace. Our focus is still B2B. But we did just launch standard, like our kind of classic Homemade in DC gift boxes that if you did have someone's birthday or like, a friend and you want to send something to, previously I was always like, oh no, sorry, minimum order of 20. But now we are stocking, kind of our like go-to favorite kind of products within a box. And that way, someone has a housewarming or a birthday or an anniversary, we can meet that need.
I love it. And amazing work, and continue doing what you do. Now, I want to go on to the next platform, the New Majority.
Yes.
What was the genesis behind that?
Yes. Okay. So the New Majority is always evolving, I would say. But, at the core of it, we're trying to make it easier for everyday New Majority investors to invest directly in founders who look like them. And so I define New Majority as women, BIPOC, LGBTQ, different than, I think, a bit more of an expansive definition than some. But ultimately, we are the new majority within the US. And why, when I look at, kind of the typical VC or even just like not VC, but like financial, systems and financial world, it really does not look like the new majority. It does not look like you. It does not look like me. And so really thinking about that's always been out there. We're always trying to change that dynamic, right? But for the new majority specifically, the mechanism is through equity and debt crowdfunding. And so rolling it back to like 2016 is when I first started hearing about this. And I was like, oh, that'd be so cool. Cause I was in the kind of tech, sales, B2B, SaaS. And, I was like, well, shoot, my college roommate, she, went and worked for Teach for America and she's doing great work, but that's not, I can't invest in her, right? Like this is not going to make us the next big thing. Right. Yeah. And so I just thought equity crowdfunding was so cool as a way to, as an everyday investor. So, I wasn't a millionaire, wasn't a sophisticated credit investor by, the IRS standards. But if I found a very cool, for me, cool also encompasses impactful, doing good work company that I believed in, like how cool would it be that I could actually invest a little something in that company And, minimum is generally $100. And am I going to get rich out of that? Probably not. But I could learn about that company. I could buy from that company. I could, tell friends about it. So like bringing not just my financial capital, but also social capital and maybe even professional capital to it. And so I just thought like that concept was really cool in 2016 when I first heard about it. It needed a little bit of policy evolution, but fast forward to when we were in grad school, it still hadn't quite hit mainstream yet, but it was growing. Like if you look at the crowdfunding industry, it had been growing. And so I needed to write my thesis for policy school. And I decided to write my thesis on basically the effect of the policy of equity crowdfunding on diversifying founders and entrepreneurs. Because the theory is, right, like if you can diversify the investors, the people funding, right, you're more likely to invest in what you identify with. And if we can diversify that group, we would end up with a more diverse group of founders getting funded. And then there's all this follow-on research about, diverse founders are building companies that are for them, their communities. Like there's this whole ripple effect of goodness that will come. So wrote my thesis, found a very small, statistically significant, but really small effect. And I think that's because equity crowdfunding is still so new. A lot of times when I talk about it, people are like, oh, like Kickstarter, like, or FIFA, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And you're like, yeah, that is crowdfunding, but equity, ownership, right? So we're building ownership on kind of both sides, right? Focusing on new majority. And so really after writing my thesis, I was like, well, just because we're democratizing the opportunity to invest in these types of companies does not mean that everybody gets that equal access, right? Like not everybody will know about it. Not everybody knows about the rules or where to go or how to evaluate these companies, right? Maybe I want to, but I was like, I got an MBA and I was like, I don't know if it's a good company. So saying that, I decided that I would curate, a list of companies that are currently raising on equity or debt crowdfunding platforms. I would just summarize. I'm not providing financial advice. I'm not doing even like new, fresh insights. It's more just like taking the information, putting it into plain English, maybe linking so that you learn a little bit as you read, right? Like you learn a little bit about investment terms and just putting that information in front of new majority investors. And the idea is like you might come to us because you do want to invest and, make it rich, right? I would say diversify your investments before doing that. But you also, when you invest in a company, you get their quarterly updates and you start to learn a lot more about that company. You become a little bit more savvy. Maybe that helps inform your next investment. Maybe you then also want to break into this startup ecosystem, right? And so this is your way. If you want to be in VC, you could say like, hey, I've invested in 20 plus companies. Here's my portfolio. Here's my thesis. And this is why, I'd be a great asset to your firm. So I think a lot of different kind of reasons why people would come to the new majority. But at the end of the day, that mission is still there of closing the racial and gender wealth gap, but through entrepreneurship and investing. And I realize that I get really excited when I talk about all of these things. So I just can keep going.
No, for sure. And it's such, and obviously I've seen you, of course, I'm a subscriber on your Substack of the New Majority and I get the frequent updates and when the podcasts come. And even before like this interview here, I was listening to one of the recordings and I was saying to you offline before we started speaking, I obviously heard you pitch about equity crowdfunding as a thing. And then recently I was in an accelerator and there was this young woman who's a brilliant entrepreneur called Kay. You might know her, Kay Rodriguez. She started.
Yeah, Outerly.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, she says, look, I literally pitched to 200 VCs and I couldn't get any funding. And to your point, of course, she's in the new majority. And she said, well, I'm going to see what else I get. And then there's this equity crowdfunding platform called WeFunder. And she literally did a session with us. She sat us down. She's like, this is what I did. I couldn't get money there. This is what I did. This is how I ran my campaign. This is how I did it. And then she told us the figures. It was between 70 and 100, $150,000. And I was like, whoa. And so I think hearing stories like that, it comes back to the story part, which is why I respect the work that you do so much. Is that sometimes it's on one hand, you hear what equity crowdfunding means, but when you tie it to a story and particular like results and outcome, you say, whoa, this thing is really powerful. And then what you do is take it a step further is in your podcasts or your storytelling, you even take a pause in the middle of each recording to unpack each technical term. You say, hey, sweat equity means XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. Then you continue with the recording, which is it's such detail, but it's empowering because it's not just empowering you with the story, but it's really going to detail for the listener to be like, hey, I want you to be able to support this person. And also, if you get it big, you get to partake in that. But I was writing down, it's formation. Like to empower, you need the information. So I think it's so cool that you go to great lengths to educate and inform. What has been the favorite part about that? What has been the favorite part about that? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, first I want to say thank you for recognizing that, because that was always the thing that, when you're in a new space, you don't want to ask the question because you're like, right? Like, but you're here to learn, and you realize that like, if you don't ask it, probably, everybody else had that same question, right? So when I was thinking about how do we further kind of connect the new majority investors with the founders, and the podcast is our way of trying to tell the story, right? Like, because when you're early stage, your idea, your business may change, but I'm investing in you as a founder. I believe in you, your passion, your ability to execute, to just keep on pushing when things get tough, right? So that was what the podcast was trying to do. But I always wanted to take that kind of opportunity to like, let's level everyone up, right? And let's learn along the way so that we become savvier and better investors. But for why did I guess that's the kind of like, why did we do it? Right. And putting those information nuggets, and we did that within the Substack initially. Cause you were saying, right, like we started off with the Substack, which is, you could say it's a blog, but it was kind of just like a little quick hit on the company. And then the podcast was really to complement with the storytelling and the who behind it. But we always did that little information piece in the Substack as well as then in the podcast. So I'm so glad that you.
No, it's good. It's you took care. I was like, wow, they really took care to just inform. And often I think that's really the thing that's going to liberate people and empower people. It's really unpacking complex information, because often finances, my big my pain point with finance is the thing I complain about is, why must you try and shroud information? Just tell it like,
yes, or have like the same word, or 5 words to mean for the same word. But at the end of the day, for businesses, like when we choose, the companies that we want to feature and highlight, at the end of the day, we're asking like, how do they make money? What are they selling?
Yep.
How do they make money? Who's buying it? Right. And then that is like the core. Like you can distill all of the fancy spreadsheets and the, what round we're in and who's invested and what market and size of market and TAM, SAM and SOM. But like, what are they selling? How do they make money? Right. And if we read an entire campaign on WeFunder or Started General Republic, and we're just at the end of the day, like, I don't know. I don't know what they're selling. Then we don't feature them. And that's part of like what we're trying to do, is just kind of cut through some of that, right? To make it simple. And then if you have questions after that and you want to, ask the founder, and you can type it into the Q&A or send a question to us to ask on our podcast, like we'd love to do it, because then we're all starting from the same, right? The same foundation.
Yeah. My last few questions, I'm going to ask you, what do you love the most and what do you hate the most about, I don't know, maybe hate is a strong word. What do you dislike? This hate is the strong word. What do you dislike? Because in anything, it's never all one thing. And I'm sure it's the same with Homemade in DC. There are moments where you're like, oh, I love this. And some moments where you're like, So yeah, with the new majority specifically, what have you truly enjoyed the most amount of fulfilling? What have you found quite challenging?
So what I have learned is I love founders.
Ooh.
Like I just think we're the coolest. I think we're inspiring. I think we're daring, like, and maybe a little stupid too, right? For like taking this leap and going all in and yeah. And, it's like when they say like, right, the kind of classic, like colloquial definition of crazy is like doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And we run experiments over and over. And we do have a different theory, right? Where they're intelligent experience, they're thoughtful, right? But like we're out here and we're just kind of trying and putting our hearts on the line. And so the thing that I've loved the most from the New Majority and Homemade is talking to founders. Like I love that podcast aspect of really kind of getting in and like you get to hear the passion, you get to hear the why. And then after the recording ends, you generally get to hear the thank you, because as big as we all may seem on LinkedIn and social media, and maybe you've been in business for 10 years or you've got X many sales, right? Like you're still just always looking for that next sale, that next win, that, next way to make an impact. And so the podcast is a huge way for us to amplify their stories, right? And so we get to hear that thank you at the end. So that is like the thing that I've hands down loved the most is talking to different founders, different industries, different businesses, but you always have like that like heart kind of within each one, right? And then on the flip side, I do think hate is a very strong word, but the thing that I have not loved the most is for the New Majority, there are just, like I said, these amazing stories. And I know there's the me out there, like the investor side who wants to hear these, maybe young professional has a little bit of excess income, working that corporate job and wants to like get into this exciting role, wants to make an impact. And this is a way for them to learn, to invest, maybe diversify their portfolios a little bit, but also kind of feel good about where they're investing in. And like also, when you're maybe a young professional, like maybe you don't have a ton financially, so you could also bring your social capital, right? Or like professional capital. Like I mentioned on the podcast, we always ask like, what is your ask from the New Majority beyond, an investment? Because it is retweeting or sharing on Instagram or making that purchase or, hey, I just took an accounting class and like, I'm sure you're covered, but like, would you like me to help you put together an initial forecast? Right. And the founder's like, yeah, what? Because they were like, I feel like I should already have this. I don't want to ask anybody. So the thing that I find frustrating.
I feel attacked.
It's all true though, right? Like we are all juggling and wearing so many hats that we're like, yes, please help us pick up this ball, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing that I find most frustrating is I know this group's out here, I want to build those connections, and it's how to reach, which is purely a sales and marketing, issue, but like how to reach the New Majority investors who are just sitting at their computers again, like at their corporate job, looking for the reading TechCrunch, but they just don't know how to get involved, right? And how do I reach those folks so that we can build these connections, make more investments happen, make more kind of growth opportunities happen? And sometimes, we're like 2 years in and I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall and I'm sending out this newsletter. I'm sending out our podcast. I'm like, is anybody listening? Is anybody out there? Right. Mm-hmm. And, to, I guess, have the craziness, right, that I mentioned and the conviction to just keep publishing. And you've seen, we've had, some hiatuses where I'm just like, I don't know, like, do I reformulate? How do I repackage this information? Because this is what I wanted. Like, I would have wanted this 5-10 years ago. Right. And so I'm figuring it out. I am call me crazy because I keep trying. But that's the thing that you kind of find frustrating sometimes is anybody out there? Is anybody listening? And I think that they are. So I just got to keep going until I can connect.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And sometimes it's hard because sometimes impact is happening, but you don't know. You don't know what's happening.
Don't I know that for our impact reports? I'm always like, please tell me the good, right? But yeah, you just might not know.
Sure. I think, yeah. And the hard thing, I guess the thing becomes just do good and do it consistently, and you never know what happens. But I think there's a balance between that and saying, well, I want a result. I want, metrics. I want metrics. But sometimes, just have to keep planting seeds. Yeah, it's a tricky one. But I guess to round us off, I wanted to ask you, what is your ask? What is your ask for both businesses or what have you? What is your main ask? Obviously, we're just launching this and who knows how impact comes, but I think it's still important to put it out there into the universe to see, who might be listening. So what is your ask?
Absolutely. Well, and I think it's also a lesson we should always have an ask, right? You should never be too big to make that. So thank you for asking. And so from the Homemade side, so we're recording this on July 15th, and it's probably super hot wherever anybody's listening. But we're putting together our holiday gifting plans already. And so we're super excited to launch our holiday gifting campaign at the end of this month. So that ask is if you are a corporate buyer and you're looking for something special, thoughtful, impactful for your clients, your VIP stakeholders, your investors, right? Your LPs, please reach out. We would love to partner with you and delight them. And then on the New Majority side, it's just subscribe. Come find us at thenewmajorityinvest.com. And if you love what we're doing, send a little note of love and feedback. I'm always here for constructive criticism, and feedback is a gift. So let us know what you like, what you don't like. If you made an investment, if you've been able to help the company you invested in. Because I have that direct line with the founders, but I don't have that direct line with our New Majority investors. And I want to grow us into a force to be reckoned with. So hop on board.
Mackenzie, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me. This has been wonderful. You're always such a joy to speak with. And we wish you all the best and keep doing what you do.
Thank you,
Thanks for tuning into Transformation Tales. We hope these stories inspired you to keep creating and sharing your voice with the world. Remember, every storyteller's journey is unique, but the courage to start and persist unites us all. Join us next week for more empowering tales of transformation.